Hey, what's going on, friends and family? Question for you. Listen, there are a lot of people who dream of moving to another country for a better life. But what if the immigration dreams turn into a total nightmare? That's what we're going to be talking about on today's episode of the Friday Fraudster. You ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Friday Fraudster podcast. Join them as they discuss sad, funny, and sometimes disturbing fraud stories. Be sure to catch past episodes on your favorite podcasting platform or go to www.fridayfraudster.com.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode number 129 of the Friday Fraudster. And today we're talking about when immigration dreams turn to nightmares. But while I have your attention here, I want to ask you all to do me a favor. If you love talking about auditing as much as I do, check out my audit podcast. It's called Audit Bites, episode number 52, The Power Shift. Auditors find gold in cubicles, not corner offices. And if you'd like to join us on this show, why don't you just give me a call? Come on, be a special guest host. You get access to the stories before everyone else, and you get to have fun. I mean, the only downside is you have to put up with me for about 30 to 45 minutes on a Friday afternoon. But other than that, it's a whole lot of fun. And so, without further ado, we are going to welcome in today's special guest host. Now, some of you all may not recognize one of the people here, and some of you may actually recognize him from in the chat. So, Bob, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell the people who you are.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob Wessler. I'm here in the middle of the United States where it's a balmy 10 degrees. Christine, I think you're probably a few degrees cooler than I am here, but I am a risk analyst or risk advisor for a financial institution, and I'm also a financial coach and co-host of another podcast with a friend of mine called without getting into all the nitty gritty, but I am a former CIA, former internal auditor and certified internal auditor at that, just like Christine has now become.
Thank you. We are warmer than you today, Bob, by 3 degrees. We warmed up.
Oh, wow.
So, Christine, who are you?
I'm Christine Murray. I am the not so special co-host. Internal audit worker, I guess. I kind of like it. I mean, I always tell Rob, I love his consulting side. It's something I never could do. So I do hold a full-time job as an internal audit manager. Specialties are in compliance, internal controls, operations, specifically within the financial sector. That's me.
All right. So, listen, you all, we've got a full house here today because I know that this LinkedIn user is Stephanie saying hello from Idaho. I'm not quite sure who this LinkedIn user is. It might be Carol Lyman. But LinkedIn is doing this funny thing where I can't even see who's commenting right now. And then Michael is here, my man. He says, good afternoon, everyone. Thomas is here. He says, happy Friday, if I can read, right? Mike Hurst is here. And Jay Wagner. Jay, what's going on, man? Jay is here. Here's another LinkedIn user. Happy Friday, everyone. Daniel is here again. Good to see you. Good to see you. And Kimberly is here saying happy Friday. Now, oh, and Karina is here. Hey, long time no see, Karina. She says happy Friday. Now, Mike Hurst says he's already listened to the Audit Bites episode, and it was a great episode, as always. I appreciate the as always. Why do you set the bar so high for me, Mike? Every once in a while, you got to tell people that some episodes maybe sucked. No, I'm just kidding. But no. Oh, goodness. You see Christine is shaking her head, you guys, because
You're too hard on yourself.
Oh, I'm just joking. But before the show, I was telling Bob, I was like, hey, Christine and I, we don't plan a whole lot. We read the stories independently and we do research. And then I ask crazy questions. And then she comes up with things that maybe I hadn't found. And sometimes I come up with things that she hasn't found. And it's a surprise factor for everyone, including us. So,
No dead bodies
so
this week.
no dead bodies. Darn. And in case you guys missed that reference, we had this one episode where apparently the guy faked his own death and used his brother's faked his wait no his brother died and he used his brother's identity, and I didn't know about that. In all my research I didn't find that part, and Christine found it and surprised me live on air.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun. So okay, so Bob, Christine, I got a question for you guys. Now, I'm assuming that we all love the USA. We love the country that we live in, but let's assume we lived in a country that we didn't like,
Mm-hmm.
and we had enough money to move to another country. Where would you all move? And you couldn't move to the USA, so that's not a good answer. But where would you move?
Belize. I already have that
Belize.
on our list. We're thinking about Belize when we retire and the kids are gone.
Ah, Belize is a good country. I have a few friends from there. Yeah. What about you, Bob? Where would you go?
I think I'd go to Germany. My family's originally from there, so I don't know that I'd want to, immigrate to there per se, but a good place to stay for a while. I have been to Norway, and that was nice. Again, it was probably 3 degrees colder than here is right now, but yeah, I really enjoyed Oslo while I was there.
Ah, now Marsha's joining us from YouTube. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, why? Why? Clarence is over on YouTube as well. And then Michael says he would go to the United Kingdom or to Spain. Yeah, I've given this a whole lot of thought at certain points. I think, and so what I'm gonna say, some people will probably be like, "Oh, why there?" But I have a few different things. Mexico would be one of mine.
Mhm.
There's certain parts that are very, very nice and that are on the coast and that have access to the beach, and the cost of living is a whole lot lower. You get paid in US dollars, you live in Mexican pesos. I can't beat that. Um, I've also thought about Belize, Turks and Caicos. As you can see, I don't cold weather, right? So how much would you pay to move to another country? Like, how much would you pay?
In all honesty, I probably wouldn't. So we've researched it. So if we retire and we have so much income and we end up moving to Belize, we actually get a break on bringing our stuff over. We don't have to pay taxes on it. We can still collect our Social Security. Healthcare is cheaper. So our move is, you're right, I want warmer weather. I grew up in this stuff. I'm done. And it's cheaper to live. So in the end, it saves us money, but I don't think I would pay to move to Belize or any other country in that facet.
What
about you, Bob? Would you pay?
Yeah, I'm glad Christine started because I don't know that I'd pay either. At least I'm cheap enough that I'd try to figure out a way to do it without paying for it. And then if I needed to, I end up paying what it needs, but I wouldn't even know where to start. So I'd start with free.
It's a good place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless
so what about you all listening? Exactly. What about you all listening? Would you pay to move to another country? And let's just suppose that, your country is not the place that you want to be. Now, if your country is the place that you want to be, let's pretend like it's not. Would you pay to move to another country? Now, I know during the pandemic, there were a lot of countries that were offering stipends and stimulus packages for you to move there, some temporary and some permanently. But I'm with you all. I don't think I would pay either. because you'd still pay some taxes in the country and you would still contribute to the local economy. So I don't think I would pay to move to another country, but there are several I wouldn't mind spending a few years in. Now, we've got one LinkedIn user. Oh, this is Stephanie saying that there are some that retire and live on a cruise ship. Ooh. Ooh.
I have heard that because it's cheaper than a retirement home. I'm sure Stephanie heard the same thing. It's cheaper than going into assisted living.
Yeah. Well, and that would be fun because you'd have all you can eat every day. Like,
And your neighbors change every 1 to 2 weeks.
ooh, that could be a plus too. It could be a minus, but that could also be a plus. I'm trying not to laugh before I show this comment, but Thomas says, I'd pay to make Texas a country again. And then Stephanie says, yep, onboard healthcare.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then I'm guessing if something tragic happened out to sea, you would probably get a life flight to the nearest, hospital at the nearest country. And that may actually be covered by whatever health insurance they have at sea too. Possibly.
I guess it all depends on how bad it is, because I also heard that cruise ships have morgues on them.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it all depends. How much?
I mean, stuff happens. So listen. Did you all know that there are people who pay a lot of money to become U.S. citizens? Now, I knew that obviously you could apply for different types of visas to come over and that it costs some money to actually do the paperwork and to process the paperwork to get you in the country. But if you are a high net worth individual who's willing to invest money in this country, you can get certain types of visas and come in. There's a such thing as an E2 visa, and it's a non-immigrant visa, but it allows individuals from certain treaty countries to enter the United States for the purpose of investing in and managing a business. Now, there are qualification criteria, but if you are willing to invest in certain companies here or build certain companies here, you can get into the United States. Then there's an EB5 visa. Now, this one is real interesting. So it provides a path to permanent residency, in other words, a green card here in the U.S. And it's for foreign nationals who make a significant investment in new commercial entities. Typically, by significant, they mean $1 million, but that can be reduced to $500,000 if the investment is made in targeted employment areas or TEAT areas. Now, did you guys know about this?
No.
Me either. So
I did not.
Here's what that makes me wonder, though. So let's just say, and I'm just throwing this out there, and this is very way out there, but let's just say if you had some sort of illicit business in another country where you were able to gather up a whole lot of cash and you wanted to retire out of that illicit business, why would you not just pay for citizenship in the U.S. or some other country that has a similar program and just retire? Get out of that bad business that you're in and start a new business with that money that you have.
I mean, I guess it all depends on how bad you want to live here. And if you're willing to pay that amount of money to be invested into a business that might work in your favor, might go down. I'm guessing it's also to help with how that affects their children as well. Can they get dual citizenship? So, because that EB5 will allow them to bring in their kids that are under 21, give them their pathway. So now they have that dual citizenship. People might be willing to pay or invest that type of money to have that access and choice for their children. For their children.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think, Bob? Bob's
I'm
like,
wondering.
that's a weird question.
Well, I'm wondering how many people just talk about putting that much money into something, and what is their connection to it? Is it their business, or is it something that they're buying into? Is it just an investment, and how much do they have on the back side of it, other than, in essence, it almost sounds like the college scams that you're paying to play, but different aspect.
I never thought of it that way, Bob.
Bob is reading my mind, because that's where I was going next with it, just as a speculation. But yeah, could this be some sort of scam in the future, or even now, to where people use it to gain access into, well, this country? Now, Marsha is saying those visas drain a country's resources, i.e., entrepreneurs go build other economies, therefore draining money out of their home economy. Yeah, that is very much so true. And I think this might be Stephanie again. Nope, this is, hey, this looks like a new user. This is RN Mendoza. I don't recall seeing you here before, so welcome, my friend. But he says, there is also a U.S. visa for extraordinary talent. Yeah, there is. And I would really like for somebody to define extraordinary talent for me. I can walk and chew gum at the same time. Is that extraordinary talent?
Only if you can snap your fingers at the same time.
Oh, that's where I fail. Dang. So it's just extra talent, not extraordinary. It's just extra.
Good thing you're already here.
Extraordinary ability in the sciences, arts, education, business, or, surprise, surprise, athletics. So there's where you're getting all of your pro athletes and everything else that are probably able to come over and work.
Ah, very good. Very interesting. Okay, so you guys are probably wondering, what is all this visa and immigration talk all about, and what's going on? Well, today, in today's story, a young woman has been indicted for impersonating an immigration lawyer and defrauding her client. You see, she falsely claimed to be able to assist foreign clients in obtaining the E2 and the EB5 visas in the United States. According to the indictment, on September 22nd of 2021, she sent a legal retainer to a victim seeking help in obtaining an EB5 visa for her parents. Now, this victim made two initial payments totaling $135,000 to her based on her representation as a lawyer. And she said that that money would be invested in a Texas real estate development project that was eligible for the plan. However, instead of investing the funds as promised, she allegedly diverted the funds to her personal bank account, surprise, surprise, and used it for personal expenses such as a down payment on a townhouse, bathroom renovations, and to repay some of her credit card debt. What do you guys think?
If there's a will, there's a way. What about you, Bob?
I'm just thinking, did she actually submit any documents, or did she just take the money and get a better bathroom?
I think she took the money and got a better bathroom.
Because it looks like all the documents that she ever provided back to them, everything else was all falsified, fake receipts for the investments into the projects that money was supposed to go to. So I think she just took it and just said, oh, here, I did do this. And that was it.
Yeah.
She used real people for it, but real entities, and then they claim that they had nothing to do with it. So,
yep. So, yeah, she created fake documents that she showed her victims, but then she used the names of real entities. That's kind of odd, right? But here's where it got even stranger. She allegedly fabricated a U.S. district court pleading with false case numbers and posed as a litigating attorney. And she provided that information to one of the victims to say, hey, look, we're caught up in court with your issue, with your immigration paperwork.
Yeah. I feel like I read somewhere she is essentially saying that, I feel like it was, I'm trying to think what social media site it was. She's essentially saying it wasn't her, that there was people in the US government that were taking advantage of her and she was doing their dirty work. But I don't know if I trust her.
I wonder how they got to the point where whoever recommended her, what was that connection? Is it, oh, I know a person, let's, what did they get out of it? Or what relationship they had where they even knew to recommend her?
I did come across a couple of attorneys that were discussing this on LinkedIn, and somebody actually did post, there is a lot of ads and work that go out in these other countries saying, we can help you get these visas really fast and everything else. And I'm wondering if maybe something like that, if she created something like that. So there is a lot of those clickbait scams out there for these visas that I don't know a whole lot of multi-millionaire nationals in other countries. I would assume, and you're right, Bob, they've got the money. If they know somebody who did it, why wouldn't you go through the same person?
Right.
Yeah. So here's the deal. You can find almost anything on the internet, right? There are message boards for everything. When it comes to immigration, I can tell you through firsthand personal experience that I won't be talking about much here, that there are some underground message boards and some on public forums. You just have to know what to ask and how to say it, where people will give you information on how to find ways to get into a country, not just the US. We're not alone in this, but also things spread through word of mouth. Once you've had success, a lot of people will go back to their country and spread the word through others. And so there's a lot of word of mouth that happens as well. So back to an earlier point, though, she allegedly used a bunch of friends to spread the word and to coerce victims into giving more money. And some of these people used false names, and some of them made false representations. For example, in one instance, she is accused of using false personas associated with that Texas investment fund to send emails to convince victims to provide even more money. She even enlisted her friends, right, to pose as employees of this investment fund during telephone calls as well as video calls with some of the victims. She had one victim that actually refused to send more money, and allegedly she threatened the victim's parents with deportation from the United States, and then also referred them to a collections agency for the money that she was trying to obtain from them, which she was trying to obtain fraudulently anyway, but she referred them to a collections agency.
Getting back to Bob's point of why people went to her, I'm wondering if it's her posing as that immigration lawyer, because she's also being charged with identity theft. So maybe it was an immigration lawyer that people knew about and somehow she niched in.
Yep. And this was for the parents that the person was doing all the work for. So that's where you have they were going to be deported.
Yeah. It's just sad. I just sit here and think, if I was in that, like, I would start freaking out if it was like, oh, we're going to deport your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do? If you have the money, do you just end up paying it?
Yeah. The scare tactic of just, if you stop sending money, they're going to get more money. They're going to figure out a way to get more money from you. And that's a good way to scare somebody into sending whatever they need to keep up the process without I guess, not having a lot of outside documentation or verification that the process is going as it should.
All right, so let me ask a question. Can you all hear me right now?
Can hear you, but you sound like you're not muffled. What would be the correct word?
In a hallway?
Yeah. So as auditors, we know that we should always be prepared. So I will tell you that my primary mic and my primary camera have both just failed. And so my system automatically backed up to my backup. And I'm like, oh, because I'm sitting here trying to figure out what is happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you two talk for a minute while I fix this issue on the fly.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I would pay if it meant keeping my parents safe. I don't know, and I don't know if you read it all, Bob, if that victim paid up those funds.
I saw that they were in a position that they were threatened, but I don't know any further than the threat, and it was an email threat that was going to go south, I guess.
The other thing that I did know, they do not have her in custody right now.
Right.
They're still looking for her. I mean, I don't know where
if anybody has information.
And I think they're going after her. I mean, it sounds like they're charging her to get the full $700,000 back. But I guess without having her, it's not like they can seize any assets or anything else until
Did you come across a profile for her anywhere?
I did. So I'm not a huge user of like Twitter or Instagram. Surprise, surprise. But I was able to locate her on Twitter. She hasn't posted anything for a while. So, I mean, which is probably smart if you don't want the FBI finding out where you are. You don't want to be leaving that digital imprint. But she is a very high profile individual, big into the politics over in Brazil. She's had a run-in previously. Oh, where did I have that? In 2017, she was charged with extortion and making slanderous accusations after she accused an aide to Congressman Marco Feliciano, a high-profile evangelical leader in Congress, of unlawful confinement and sexual assault. This is going to sound so horrible. I went to the article to find out more information, but it is not, I do not speak multiple languages. So I did try using Google Translate as much as I could. But yeah, like they ended up arresting the gentleman based on her charges. They came back, found out, no, they were falsified. She was saying she was taken and imprisoned and sexually assaulted. And so I don't think that bodes well for her statement that she isn't the person that was the driving force in her current charges. I don't think that helps.
And they can't find her to prove it
either. Right.
Yeah. All right. So, am I back? How do I sound?
Perfect.
All right. So listen, somebody, and I think this is Stephanie again. Yeah. Threatening someone in writing is not very smart. Right. There were emails. So I read the indictment. If you read the indictment, there were emails and then there were recounts of telephone calls, but there were emails where she went back and forth saying certain things to some of the people. Now, Daniel says, but did they do an educational background check through on the lawyer before you send money? I'm assuming you would expect to find it on the internet.
Right.
Yeah, you would think at a minimum they would at least look up her number, because when you pass the bar, kind of like when you pass the CPA exam, you have a number and you're registered with the state, and that's typically public record. Like, for example, you can go and look up my CPA license number in the state where I obtained my license from. You can find my license number. So yeah, And then this is Stephanie here. That's how people in other countries fall into pig butchering scams. Yeah, and end up in essentially prison camps being forced to scam others. Yep. They are desperate to leave their home countries. Yeah.
Well, and I also look at it from the perspective, like, I know Bob and I, we didn't know about these EB2 visas, and we live in this country. If you're from another country and you're like, oh, I'm going to get a lawyer, everything else, things are probably so vastly different that unless you're willing to sit down and put in the time to kind of research that, I mean, I know you should. I mean, we all know we should. But it's no different than everybody we've ever heard of with Ponzi schemes and everything else. I think humans have a natural trust that's built when it comes to people in certain positions.
Well, it was a recommendation too. It wasn't like, I don't think they went through just a listing of who can provide this type of service. It was somebody that was referred to her.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was somebody that had gotten scammed previously and thought they were going through the process and said, oh, I've used this person, you should use them too. And it's in essence turning into the same, not necessarily a Ponzi scheme, but you're building on that pipeline.
Right.
You know, Marsha is saying, don't lawyers have a contract and retainer, then a payment plan for legal work plus a contract? Yeah, and that's, I think from what I understand, she was obtaining a lot of the funds as a retainer. And then some of it was fee to actually file the paperwork. Because in one instance, she's being charged with providing false documentation back to her client saying, basically a confirmation saying that the immigration documentation had been received. So allegedly she falsified that documentation and sent it back. So I'm guessing every time you do an action, you know, every time she did an action, she was asking for payment. So you got your upfront retainer. And then once that retainer runs out, you know, you either put up another retainer or you start paying as services are being performed. But yeah, they are going to get paid.
I'm just looking at the descriptions of some of these transactions, and everything was being wired into her Wells Fargo account.
Yep.
It makes me wonder if they were tipped off, you know, being not normal activity.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that's on my list as well. So now what Christine is referring to, you guys, is there's a list of all the transactions that she's being charged with. You know, wire fraud was the biggest one, but all of them went to one account, her Wells Fargo account. And ideally, if you think about it, you have a fee that you're going to pay your attorney, right? But if you're coming in on one of those types of visas and you're investing in a company, I don't see why you would be paying your attorney to actually make that investment for you. Now, granted, she could have been maybe a real estate attorney and an immigration attorney for the land deal and for the real estate deal in Texas. But even then, why would the attorney get the money that's for the investment? You would make that payment directly to the people you're investing with. So what Christina's saying is, did Wells Fargo actually see it and then report them or start investigating or, you know, tip someone off? That's what I was wondering.
Because I'm just looking, 125,000. I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, like I'm looking at $125,000 wired in. 2 months, not even 2 months before that, 11,000. And then a few months later, another 28. I would think your AML software would be sitting here going, hey, large wire transfers coming in, take a look at me. As your BSA anti-money laundering expert, you should be taking a look at those wire transfers coming in. I'm guessing they probably have memos, I would think. At any one of those, did it say something about attorney? And then you look at it and going, oh, wait, if these wires are coming in for an attorney, this puts this account into a whole different risk category because attorneys are one of those high-risk AML businesses. So I'm looking at it at a different perspective that way as well. Like, does your organization have those type of controls, reviews, stuff like that? Because, I mean, Wells Fargo's all over these descriptions for these wire transfers in, which is not their fault. I'm not saying that, but for monitoring.
But it
And
goes
they
a
could
step
have.
further too. This wasn't a business Wells Fargo account. It was a personal Wells Fargo account. And so that's why my brain started going there. And
Yes.
so I'm guessing this is Stephanie again too, saying those transactions into her account would have alerted with the bank. Yeah. And then someone else, another LinkedIn user, is saying that's not a lot for certain customers. Oh, that's Stephanie again. And then she also said, if she wasn't an actual attorney, the bank may not have had her classified as one. Oh, yeah, that's another good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And I guess
And
the way that I'm looking at it is if you're all of a sudden having these large transactions that are outside of the normal stuff, that's what it should have kicked off that research. Would they have pulled that? And like I said, I'm not saying Wells Fargo did anything wrong. I don't know the woman's transactions, how her bank account was. So it could have just been that she always had that type of transaction. That's just a lot for a personal account coming in as a wire transfer rather than payroll.
Yep.
Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No. It's very good. Very good point. Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your point, I don't think we were maybe disparaging Wells Fargo. I think we were speculating if they actually did a really good thing, you know? But yeah, I am wondering how this one got caught. And Stephanie is saying they probably did, but SARs are not public record. Yeah, they aren't. So for those of you who don't know what a SAR is, it's a suspicious activity report, and banks have to file those anytime there are transactions over, what is it, $5,000? Forgot the dollar amount. Or is it 10?
10.
10,000 and a penny for SARs. But then you've got your purchase. So if you purchase like cashier's checks and stuff, they have to retain that on 3,000.
Yeah.
And then, yep. And then wire transfers is just wire transfers. But your bank should still be monitoring those segregation of types of transactions and how they correlate with your historical patterns of your banking.
Now, Stephanie makes another point. She says, even if banks submit SARs, it doesn't mean the government did anything with it. Now, I'll be honest with this one. Back in the day, I was a bank teller back before a lot of stuff was automated. And the SAR literally was handwritten. And I even back then as a college student, I was saying to myself, how in the world is the government actually monitoring and doing trending on this type of activity? Because it's all handwritten. Is somebody actually putting all of these from every bank into some sort of database? And I think, well, I know they've been electronic for years now, but still, Stephanie makes a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
And the volume of them is overwhelming. Last I heard that there are so many that they can't keep up with the volume to even track them to start looking at them. So it's more of a bank filing and making sure that the bank is doing due diligence more so than sending it on to the government.
Right. And now Stephanie says CTRs are $10,000. And if you don't know what that is, that's a currency transaction report. Talking to the audience. Now, I know, Christine, I know you know what it is. But wait a minute. Now I'm forgetting exactly what was a currency transaction. What's the difference between a CTR and a SAR? I've forgotten. It's been so long.
SAR is the suspicious versus CTR is just over 10,000.
Yeah, it's just the transaction period. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. See, this
so
is
Stephanie is right.
Guest host.
Stephanie is right. They could have filed the SAR, so they were alerted, and they're going, "Hey, this doesn't look right." It's not like they contact her and ask her questions, and then they just submit it, and then it's out of their control. And that's what they do. They keep on submitting it until they determine that that's normal transaction activity for that individual, and then they can stop.
And I guess Wells would be more suspicious. Wells would be more suspicious on the outgoing wires than they would on the incoming wires. But you said it was a personal account, which would definitely raise suspicion versus it being a business account. And if she had falsified documents to be an attorney with Wells.
You know, here's one that's interesting. So speaking of falsified documents, as I'm looking back at my notes, not only did she allegedly falsify the documents, but she even allegedly falsified the notary seal on a
Oh,
document. Because some documents you have to have notarized. Who? That's pretty significant from a legal penalty standpoint. Wow.
can you search for notaries? Or is that state
Oh,
dependent?
I think it is state dependent because you're a notary for your specific state, right?
Mhm.
But that begs the question though, is that something that's protected, or is that under the Freedom of Information Act? I imagine the individual notary as well as their notary number is public record, but then the documents that they actually notarize are not. That would be my speculation.
I don't
So
know. Is it ethical?
your
Is
record
it?
has, sorry, Christine.
No, go ahead.
I said the record will have who you're notarizing for
Right.
and the type of document, but not the contents of the document, because you're only, at least in Missouri, and I think this was how it was in Texas, you're not necessarily notarizing the content of the document, but the person that signed it in front of you. So the content would not be part of the record.
Right.
Yep. So
all this effort, man. All this effort to rip people off.
right. Clarence is saying casinos have to do them too. The CTRs, I'm assuming, is what he's talking about. And then Stephanie, I think this is Stephanie. Stephanie is saying notaries have a bond and state requirements on record keeping. Yeah, absolutely. But but even that is just the person that they served and the time and the date, not necessarily the contents. But yeah. All right. So if you're just joining us, you need to go back and listen to the rest of it, because what we've been talking about today is an individual who allegedly faked being an attorney and allegedly obtained money from individuals and in the promise of getting them immigration status in the United States. But these weren't just regular immigrants or potential immigrants. These were high net worth individuals who were going to have a special type of visa because they were investing in businesses in the United States. Some investments upwards of $1 million or more. And, well, apparently it was all fake. And she obtained a lot of money from them, allegedly falsified some documents, allegedly did some identity theft in order to obtain money from these individuals. She's been charged with a litany of things at this point. And let's see, got to find my records to see what she was required to hand over in forfeiture. I know it was at least one home and I think $625,000 in cash.
Was it just the house that she bought that they knew of? Oh, paid off her credit card debt. Wasn't that one?
Yeah, she paid off her credit card debt, and then there was the home.
Yeah. How long do you think it's going to take for them to find her?
They may not. If she's already out of the country, they may not. Here it is. I found it. So there's a home in Arlington, Virginia, and then let's see. The property subject to forfeiture includes, but is not limited to, the following: the home in Virginia and the sum of money equal to $694,299.82. So that means she had that much in a bank account or several bank accounts. Wow. Jeez. Okay, let's go back to, there is a visa that you can get for having extraordinary talent. Let's go back to that for 1 minute, because Michael says that his extraordinary talent would be STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. That makes perfect sense to me, right? Like you
Come
would
on over,
want to
Michael.
you
If you're not
want to
already
have more
here.
people, right? And then Mike Hurst says that I am an extraordinary talent, and don't let anyone tell me otherwise. My mom would be happy to hear that, Mike. She'd be very happy to hear that.
Oh,
All right, Christine. Did you
yeah.
find anything else? Any other surprises today?
I did mention the 2017 that she was charged with extortion and making slanderous accusations while you were getting your microphone fixed. She, even looking at her Twitter profile or her X profile, she has some serious hatred for the politics over there, which is understandable. It doesn't mean you have to be happy. But she accused an aide to a congressman, is what it was, for unlawful confinement and sexual assault. So they arrested the guy, then found out she lied, and then charged her.
Yep.
And I wonder when she came over here, and if she came over on a visa.
You ask a good question, because I had just assumed that she did. And here's why. But you know what you do when you assume, right? I just assumed that she did because in order to understand the system, you either have had to work in it at some point or have gone through it. And I was sharing with you all before the show, I have some experience in it because working in higher education, we had to understand certain immigration statuses and certain types of visas in order to bring in international students. So that was kind of my first introduction into the visa system. So I just kind of assumed. However, you should never assume. So that's a good question.
Because it says she was originally from Brazil.
Yeah. Now, Marsha is saying that 750K is peanuts to hunt down a felon for in the U.S. Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is. And then Marsha's also saying that STEM is the quickest way to get a visa. Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, 750K is who I really feel sorry for, though, is the families who have ponied up this amount of money. Because I'm imagining they probably weren't, and again, this is just me speculating, but I'm imagining that even though they gave up a lot of money, they probably weren't necessarily wealthy. They probably were hardworking people who were middle to upper middle class, but not wealthy, who were able to save up a bunch of money. And the reason that I say that is because if they were multi millionaires, they would have found a legitimate attorney. They would have done background research on the attorney. And as a matter of fact, their attorney in Brazil probably would have referred them to one in the US. But instead, they found an alternative attorney, which I'm betting that her rates were probably cheaper than some of the other attorneys that they had found. Again, this is all speculation, but again, if you were independently wealthy, you probably wouldn't have met her to begin with.
Mm-mm. Well, and I know we were talking about that impact on the people that it happened to. Mm-hmm. And then prior to us going live, we talked about the impact that this could have on financial institutions if they would have gotten false documents. And I know, Bob, you mentioned you have really good experience with that as far as controls.
Yeah, just in actually right now looking at them again to say, okay, what are we looking at? What needs to be looked at? And how do we need to process these differently, knowing that it is an issue? Just knowing, first of all, what the document is supposed to look like, and being able to identify one that doesn't quite look up to snuff.
Yeah, because what most of us do is we'll receive a document that's on an organization's letterhead, or especially if it has a seal on it and you can feel that seal. Typically we say, oh, okay, and we just let it go without question. But we live in the information age where you can easily Google something to see what a typical document actually looks like. And I'll share a story with you. I worked for one organization where we were receiving documentation from foreign students. And at one point, my team actually discovered that a student submitted a transcript to us and wanted transfer credits. So they were transferring from one university to our university. And that's pretty normal, right? Well, we gave them credit. However, the transcript was fake. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even for another college. It was a high school transcript from their country. Now, we found it because we were smart enough to just use Google. So we live in the information age where information is at your fingertips. And someone, I think this is probably Stephanie, trust but verify, just look it up.
Mm-hmm. I have a crazy story, and I had an off feeling. I was a loan officer. Gentleman came in, gave me a letter of employment because he had just started. And I'm like, oh, well, the letter's not signed. And he's like, okay, I'll run back, get HR to sign it. Comes back. Mind you, I had already taken a photocopy at this time. And something felt off. I Googled. I'm not kidding you. The logo for the company was upside down on his letterhead. He came back with the signed letter. I called the company. The HR person was out of the country on her honeymoon. Yes.
Wow.
That's the other thing about being in the information age. You can go pick out what the document should look like and match it. I mean, we're getting to the point where Photoshop or whatever else that can be used, that you have a hard time deciding what the real document is compared to a falsified one, unless it just is really bad. And, Stephanie's point of trust but verify, I saw earlier this week, verify before trust. And, we've heard trust but verify forever since the 80s. Thank you, President Reagan. But you turn that around and say verify before trust, and that kind of go, that makes a lot of sense, because again, the information age, we need to verify this before we just take somebody at their word on some of this stuff, or at the document that they present.
So Bob and Christine, I don't know if you guys are looking at the LinkedIn chat. You can see it where we are now, but what you can't see are the emojis popping up. And that last little dialogue we had, several people were just laughing. I just saw the laughing emoji just flying across my screen. So they found that kind of funny, and so did I. To your point, Bob, with verify but trust. So trust but verify, I've used it. A lot of us use it. It always kind of gave me a strange feeling, though, because as my friend Hal Garin says, if you're verifying, then you really don't trust. He hates that statement, by the way.
Right?
And so for me, I used it because it's not the best, but it's better than most out there. But you're right. If you just reverse it, that actually makes sense. You are going to verify something before you trust someone. And we do this in all areas and aspects of our life. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. But I think for me, I understood what Ronald Reagan was trying to say. And so the spirit of it, I understood. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, now Michael says, then when you throw AI into the mix, things become more complicated. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, look at all the deep fake videos that are out there at this point. It's getting crazy.
Oh, it's getting real crazy. Because, I practice with generative AI. I feel like auditors should understand the stuff that we're supposed to audit. Look, I've created images and just done face swaps with my face. If you remember the show that I did one Friday here, where I did a face swap live on air. So this stuff is getting really, really interesting. And I think this is Stephanie again saying, I used to tell my customers at my prior bank, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust anyone.
I like that.
I do like that. But when I was a teller, here's what I would tell people. I would say, it's not you, but I want to make sure that I safeguard your money. So, wouldn't you want me to at least do a double check before I let your money go out the door? And most of them would say, that actually makes sense.
Thought you were starting off with like a bad breakup statement. It's not you, it's me. I might start saying that. Hey, I gotta verify. It's not you, it's me. I have issues.
Ooh, that actually could work. Yeah.
I have
trust
issues.
issues.
I have trust issues. That's what makes me a good auditor.
It's the line of business. It doesn't help.
If we trusted everyone, we'd be out of a job.
Oh boy, they're laughing over here on LinkedIn. You know what? It was weird today. I didn't even check in on my YouTube audience. Hold on. We pulled up their comments, but normally I have the screen open too, and I'm interacting and engaging with them too. But anyway, today was an interesting day. All right, so Christine, Bob, anything else? Did you guys discover anything else? Oh, guess what? Looks like that audit guy's on YouTube. Look at that.
Huh?
Yeah. All right. So anything else, guys? All right. So thank you for joining us on episode number 129 of the Friday Fraudster, Crossing Borders When Immigration Dreams Turn to Nightmare. Listen, you all, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, go and do that. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, go and do that. If you've not left me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to the podcast, shame on you. Go and do that too. That's all we have for this week. Wait a minute. Rob is everywhere.
As I'm sitting here,
I got a little choked up there. Oh, wait a minute. We can't end the show yet. Hold on just 1 minute. So for those of you listening, Christine has just pulled up both of my books. Now, see, you told the people the week before last what you thought about Ask Better Questions, Get Better Answers, Perform Better Audits.
Oh, yes, I finished that one.
Yeah, you told them last week or the week before last what you thought about that. Have you finished reading Wonderful Work Papers yet?
I have not, and this is the pathetic part about it.
Yeah, it's only like 2 pages.
So I'm starting a new planner. It is a quarterly planner that you do. It's thick, and it's goal setting. So today I have to read 30 minutes. I'm going to get this done. I can get this done in 30 minutes. Maybe longer, because I do like taking notes when it comes to stuff. Like you can see, I have tabs in your book. But yeah, if you don't, I do need to read this one because I'm actually kind of excited for it.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be laughing because I'm the book's author, right? But I've never heard anyone say, I'm excited to read a book about audit work papers.
Well,
even Bob can contain it.
If you really knew me, like I love Excel. I love data analytics. I love looking and pulling and all that kind of stuff and having stuff organized. I'm a huge, like if you saw my office right now, you guys would probably laugh. I'm huge on organization. So, I mean, I've got oh no. Like I have one specific notebook that has sections for every single audit that I have going on. I've got a blank checklist for each one that I put in the front, and I check and I date and I highlight. That's how things go smooth. So that's why I'm excited for this. I'm sorry.
Rob, you might have a second version of that with Christine's notes.
I just might. She's like, this is not how you do work papers. This is how you do work papers.
Oh, no.
You know, what's really interesting, though, And I'll say this before we leave. With that one, that book, Wonderful Work Papers, I had
Hmm.
written it and then I sent it to four people that I really, really trust. And one of them was this woman who worked with me for me at one point in time, and she had some of the best work papers I'd ever seen. I mean, next to mine, right? And and so I sent it to her, and she read it, and she gave me all these sticky notes. You need to say this. You need to don't forget about that. And I was like, oh, yes, ma'am. And she helped make the book even better. And then I had another friend that I sent it to. She actually went in and just rearranged stuff. And I was like, wait a minute. I just asked her to read it. So I was at that point I felt like I needed to pay her. But anyway, so yeah, that book was heavily vetted by some people that I really, really like and trust. I'm gonna do a version 2 at some point because there's a lot of stuff I want to add to it. But each section starts with like a story, so it's not boring. It's like, hey, for work
Yes.
paper A, you do this. No, there's a story, and the story is usually sad, interesting, or just funny. Sometimes all three. And then there's a lesson learned based on that story, on how somebody may have done something very interesting when it came to work papers. I know Christine noticed that about the other book too, but I just
This
like
one has
telling
it too.
stories.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I did read through chapter one, and you do have stories that are in it, but I'm I'm not gonna sit here and say, yeah, I've been doing audit for 10 years. I don't need help with my work papers. Yeah, everybody does stuff good,
yeah,
but you can always be better. If we can sit here as auditors and give people in management and throughout the organization recommendations to be better, we can do it for ourselves. I mean, I guess that's my
yeah,
opinion on it. So if I can get feedback from management, from other auditors, from people within the field that sits here and goes, well, I notice this is how you do something. Have you thought about doing it this way? It might make things easier. It might be able to get people that are used to not looking at work papers to follow your rabbit hole of data and information. I'll take it.
yeah. And that's precisely why I wanted to mention, like I just did, how I sent the book out to some people that I trusted because I wanted to make sure that other people laid eyes on it. And, what I really said was, what are some of the pain points you've seen trying to review other people's work papers and or trying to prepare your own work papers? So yeah, I think that's a very important topic because if you can get your work papers right, and so here's the test for me. If you, as an auditor, can actually hand your work papers over to a cantankerous client and they can understand it and they look at you and say, yeah, I guess you are telling the truth, then you've done a good job. And I think we should always bear in mind that at any point in time, our work papers could be subject of some sort of legal action. We could have to turn them over to some sort of law enforcement agency at any point in time. And so you want to make sure that not only can your fellow auditors understand them, but your clients, if they want to see them, or any other stakeholders or law enforcement.
Yep.
So, anyway, all right, guys. Thank you all for joining us today. We will see you all next week.